legend of Captain Ella Monroe, asterisk, asterisk. It was just another Saturday afternoon at the small diner in Jacksonville. The same one Ella Monroe had visited every week for years. The hot summer air had started to waver above the pavement, the hum of the city filling the streets. Ella, 63, silver-haired and wheelchair-bound, gently wheeled herself toward the entrance, a quiet dignity in every movement. Dressed in her faded khaki jacket and clutching a well-worn paper bag, she entered, eyes forward, but lips sealed. A group of young men blocked the narrow aisle between the tables. "You're in the way. Can't you roll somewhere else?" They mocked, erupting into laughter. Their taunts echoed, but Ella said nothing. She simply exhaled softly and waited her turn, the noise from the group washing over her. When she finally reached the counter, the waitress, with a sigh too loud to be ignored, told her, "We're full, ma'am. You'll have to wait." The young woman behind Ella, clearly arriving after her, was called forward instead. Ella placed a crumpled $10 bill on the counter. No one took it. No one apologized. With a quiet resignation, she turned to leave. As Ella rolled towards the door, the group of young men high-fived each other, celebrating their actions. A small boy, noticing the scene, tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Why is no one helping her?" he whispered. His mother, barely audible, replied, "Some people just get used to being invisible." Ella's wheels hummed softly against the linoleum, her back straight, her eyes forward, her demeanor unchanged by the mistreatment. As she exited the diner, the summer heat hit her skin, but it was the unacknowledged weight of her silence that seemed the heaviest. Ella's pain was not just physical. It was a lifelong battle fought quietly, hidden beneath the layers of her faded jacket. The small military pin tucked inside her clothing, only visible when the wind lifted her jacket's fabric, told a story that no one in the diner could see. For decades, she had lived this way, unseen, until now. She didn't carry a medal, nor did she seek praise. But Ella was a hero, one of the kind that had never asked for recognition, despite saving countless lives in places that most would never dare to go. In 1984, during the invasion of Grenada, Ella had commanded a rapid response medical team. Her field hospital was shelled, and in the chaos, she evacuated 37 soldiers, carrying the last one out herself, despite being injured. In 1991, she was deployed to Iraq during Operation Desert Storm. Her hands, once steady enough to save lives under enemy fire, had performed surgeries in the dark, using only a penlight when generators failed, saving over 200 soldiers in 3 weeks. Her courage never faltered, not even when her own helicopter was shot down in Bosnia in 1996, leaving her with a permanent spinal injury. The military discharged her after 22 years, and she quietly faded into the shadows of life. There were no medals, no ceremonies, no public acknowledgement, just Ella, alone with her memories and a photograph from a time when she was a legend in the medical corps. For years, Ella had refused every recognition, every ceremony, and every attempt at honoring her. She declined awards, speaking engagements, and reunions. "I was just doing my job," she would say. But her family life had suffered too. After the sudden death of her husband, a Chinook pilot, in 2004, and the growing strain in her relationship with her daughter, Ella had retreated from the world. She kept her veteran status a secret, quietly carrying the past in her bag. A bag that held not just her photograph, but the unspoken truths of a life spent in service to others. One day, an email arrived, sent to the library, where Ella frequently read, "We've been looking for you. We haven't forgotten. Lieutenant Mark Dawson, 3rd Airborne Medical Division." Ella didn't respond. But she carried that letter with her, an old, weathered piece of paper, on her regular Saturday outings. The diner, the park, and the Veterans Memorial were all part of the routine she'd built for herself. A quiet existence where she could live in peace without anyone knowing the true extent of her sacrifices. But things were about to change. 3 weeks ago, as Ella sat on her usual park bench, A strange vehicle appeared at the intersection. Two uniformed soldiers emerged, scanning the area with a sense of purpose. Ella's hand, clutching the bread she'd just bought from the bakery, trembled slightly. The soldiers were coming for her. After 28 years of silence and invisibility, they had finally found her. Meanwhile, inside the diner, the ground began to shake. A distant, thunderous sound approached. The helicopter's roar was unmistakable. A Chinook transport helicopter descended in front of the diner, dust swirling around it as it landed with a deafening thud. 6 soldiers in special operations gear filed out, forming a line, saluting in perfect unison. Leading them was Lieutenant Colonel Mark Dawson, a man Ella had saved all those years ago in Iraq when he was just a young soldier. He had been bleeding out from a wound that should have been fatal. But Ella saved him, and now he had spent years trying to find her. The diner fell silent as Dawson's voice cut through the stillness. "We're here for Captain Ella Monroe," he announced. A server dropped a glass. The group of young men shrank back into their corner, suddenly feeling small and guilty. "She's not just military," Dawson continued, his voice carrying, "she's a legend in the medical corps, the ghost medic of Desert Storm." Ella, still unaware of the commotion, remained on her park bench. A small military vehicle approached her, and a young soldier stepped out. He bowed his head respectfully, extending his hand to her. "Ma'am, the unit would like to see you. They've waited 28 years." Ella's expression remained impassive, but the smallest tremor ran through her fingers. She nodded once. Without hesitation, she wheeled herself toward the soldiers, who had quickly set up a ramp. Her silver hair lifted slightly in the breeze, her expression not surprised but resigned, as if she had known this moment would come eventually. When she reached the soldiers, Dawson knelt before her, removing his cap and presenting a small box. Inside was the Bronze Star Medal, a long overdue recognition for her courage. Dawson's voice cracked as he spoke. "You saved lives, Captain. We are here to remember that." The crowd outside stood in stunned silence, some wiping away tears, others recording the moment on their phones. A mother, holding her child on her shoulders, whispered, "Do you remember that woman from earlier?" The boy nodded, wide-eyed. "She's not invisible now." The soldiers read the citation aloud, recounting Ella's bravery under fire, her tireless efforts to save 37 soldiers, despite being critically injured herself. The people who had ignored her in the diner now stood before her, finally understanding the magnitude of her service. For the first time in years, Ella was seen, not just as the woman in the wheelchair, but as the legend she had always been, a silent hero, no longer invisible. Ella Monroe had lived a life of quiet heroism, never seeking the recognition she deserved. But in this moment, surrounded by those who finally understood, she was no longer just a memory. She was a living testament to courage, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that carries on even when no one is watching. The streets were quiet, save for the distant hum of a passing helicopter that would soon change everything. A small diner in Jacksonville, where the heat of summer clung to the pavement, had become the unlikely backdrop for a story of silent heroism, one that had long been overlooked. Ella Monroe, a woman confined to a wheelchair but not to her past, was about to be revealed as the hero she had always been, though no one had seen her for who she truly was. Not until today. It was an ordinary Saturday when Ella entered the diner. She had made this trip every week, not for fame or attention, but for the comfort of routine. She wore a faded khaki jacket, her silver hair tucked under a cap. Her presence, though unassuming, was like a ripple of silence in a sea of noise, unnoticed by most of the people around her, except for a group of young men who, in typical youthful arrogance, blocked her way. "You're in the way. Park that thing somewhere else," one of them jeered, and the others laughed. It was a cruel jest that went unnoticed by everyone, except for Ella. who simply lowered her gaze and allowed the words to wash over her without retaliation. She had long ago learned the art of quiet endurance, the skill of becoming invisible when society deemed you unworthy of acknowledgement. But Ella Monroe was far from invisible. As the young men laughed, no one could have known that the woman before them was a hero whose actions had saved countless lives, actions that, until now, had never been celebrated. For Ella, recognition was never the goal. The work, the service, the saving of lives, that was what mattered. Yet, life has a way of making the unseen seen when it is least expected. A few minutes later, the world around them shook. The street vibrated, the ground trembling as a Chinook helicopter descended from the sky, its rotors slicing through the air with a deafening force. The crowd outside the diner fell into stunned silence, and then, as if drawn by an invisible force, everyone turned. It was Ella's moment, though it came in the most unexpected of ways. The soldiers emerged from the helicopter, stepping toward Ella, their faces solemn but reverent. One by one, they introduced themselves. Faces she had once known, faces she had saved. The young man who stood before her, his voice quivering with emotion, was no stranger. "My mother was on your last flight in Bosnia," he said, his words thick with gratitude. "She tells me every birthday that I exist because of you." And the stories continued. A soldier whose leg she had saved in Basra, another whom she had delivered in a bunker under fire. Each person a reminder of her impact, her unseen legacy. The helicopter blades fell silent, and in their stillness, the air buzzed with respect. Dawson, a lieutenant colonel who had known Ella for years, approached the young men who had mocked her earlier. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice filled with authority, "perhaps you'd like to meet the woman you found so amusing earlier." They froze, the humor drained from their faces as they realized who they had mocked. Yet, Ella raised her hand, a gentle command to end the confrontation. "That's unnecessary, Lieutenant Colonel," she said, her voice strong despite its rarity in public. "Respect isn't taught through humiliation." Her eyes met theirs, and one by one they bowed their heads, a silent apology more powerful than any words could convey. As Dawson turned to her, the weight of the moment pressing in, he asked, "Why did you hide for so long, Captain?" Ella's gaze was steady, clear, and direct. "Because the work was what mattered, not the recognition," she said, a simple truth that had guided her life. But today, something had changed. Today, recognition wasn't for her alone. It was for everyone like her, the invisible heroes who served without fanfare, without the promise of glory. A fold flag was presented to her by a young lieutenant. "From the unit you saved," he said, "we've carried your name with us every deployment since." The ceremony, small by Ella's request, was an intimate affair. No press, no politicians, just soldiers past and present, honoring one of their own. It was everything Ella had wanted. Humble, sincere, unadorned. A salute was exchanged, and Ella, in her wheelchair, returned it with perfect military precision. It was as though time had not diminished her skill, her pride, her unwavering commitment to duty. Later, Dawson leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Why now, Captain?" he asked. Ella took a long breath. "Because now it isn't about me. It's about all the invisible people, the ones in wheelchairs or with canes or with scars you can't see. If my story makes someone look twice before judging, then it's worth telling." And so a documentary filmmaker approached, eager to capture Ella's story. She agreed, but only on her terms. This story was no longer just her own. It belonged to every unseen hero who carried on in silence. As the film crew prepared, Dawson asked, "The helicopter landing, was that your idea?" Ella's response was unexpected. A burst of laughter, genuine and bright. "Military subtlety has never been our strong suit," she replied, the humor in her voice unexpected but welcome. What surprised her most about her new life, though, wasn't the recognition or the comfort. It was the freedom she felt for the first time in years. Freedom from hiding, from being unseen. In her new apartment, she hung the photograph that had stayed hidden in her bag for years. A photo of her unit, a reminder of the lives she had touched, of the men and women who had been saved because of her care. Below it, she placed a crumpled napkin from her last visit to the diner. A reminder that sometimes journeys end not where we expect, but exactly where we are meant to be. Ella's story, like so many others, is one of quiet courage, of strength in the face of adversity. Some people serve their entire lives and remain unseen, but it is not the medals they wear that define them. It is the lives they touch, the lives they save, that leave the truest mark. And sometimes, it takes a helicopter landing on a quiet street to make us see what was always there, quietly waiting for us to notice. The same diner still operates on that corner. The same park bench sits beneath the willow tree, inscribed with the words, "To those who served silently." Now, when a person in a wheelchair enters, they find every door held open, every path cleared, every gaze respectful. Ella's legacy lives on, not in the applause of a crowd, but in the quiet reverence of those who understand the true cost of service. In the end, the greatest heroes are not always those who wear the medals or the uniforms. Sometimes, they are the ones who serve without recognition, who carry on in silence, and who, when finally seen, show us the true meaning of courage, compassion, and justice.